It could be one layer. It could be 45 layers. It could just need like three
It could be
notes fixed.
totally well
Yeah.
sung, or it could be a piece of a shit sandwich that needs special love. Yeah.
I was looking for euphemisms and I couldn't find it. And you took that moment to just say a shit sandwich. So I appreciate that. Hi, Ben.
Hi, Carl.
We are diving right into it.
As if we haven't been speaking for, I don't know, 40 minutes.
Yeah. We just spent a lot of time trying to figure out what to talk about and then just going on endless little side quests.
That was just like a fraction of this conversation. But yes, but that's also true. But we are.
But
how
here.
are you, Carl? It's good to see you.
Good. It's good to see you too. It's good to see you too.
And
I want to start off by acknowledging two things. Number one, three things. Number one, Ben, I love you. Number two, I said this before and I'll say it again. You've got with your handheld microphone right now, you've got wedding DJ doing sound check vibes, and I stand by that.
Yeah.
And number three,
I could get behind that.
Yes, and I got to make fun of myself too. Number three, today's episode of Secret Sonics is brought to you by Manscaped because I'm actually just kidding. But specifically, I've been like shaving my head for the past like I don't know maybe a year now, and I got this like when I first started doing it, I got this like cheapo like Philips head shaver thing, and it sucks and it takes forever. And I think I'm gonna finally go and spend money on like a real head shaver thing, which I think that solidifies myself as a 40-something dad. I think I'm like officially like no turning back from this moment.
Wow.
So
well, congratulations, because
thanks.
Getting to this moment is the best outcome of all the outcomes, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
I was thinking, I mean, I could try to do like the Hulk Hogan and like just have the top bald and like keep some like horseshoe kind of thing going. But
yeah, the Einstein.
Yes. I don't know if I'm going to do that, but
well, it's not the Einstein. It's it's the Ben Gurion. It's the founder of the state of Israel. Looked like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's so not actually sponsored. I was just kind of like hoping if I put that out into the world, I would magically get a free head trimmer, but I don't know why that would be a relevant. I don't think that'd be a good business choice by Manscaped.
This is the wrong. You're in the wrong.
Audience.
Yeah, this is the wrong topic of podcast for this kind of sponsorship.
Unless, hold on, hear me out. What if we talk about how the revision process makes us pull our hair out?
Oh. This is a bit of a stretch, but maybe
we're not going to do that.
I'll send this episode around to some people, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
we'll see what sticks.
Let's not do any of that. In reality, we want to talk about. I believe what we finally, after like 40 minutes of pre-recording banter, I think we finally figured out what we want to talk about today.
Yes, I think so. I think we did a lot of like technical mixing episodes in a row, and I think some of that stuff will continue in the future, but I think let's break it up a little bit and do something a little bit, from the other side of the spectrum. We were talking about the business side of being a mixing engineer and how it's been changing, and it's 2025. And, we did an episode about a year ago about how being a mixing engineer is changing. And I thought it'd be interesting to talk about how the business of being a mixing engineer is changing. And I think you have a lot of light to shed on this, and I might have a little bit of light to shed on this. But Carl, I'm going to throw this to you. What's it like to be a business owner that is a mixing engineer in 2025? And how has it evolved over the last little bit?
I think the elephant in the room for it is the fact that the global economy is kind of taking a dump right now.
Yeah.
I think that's like the nice way to put it. And I think one of the big things that we're not really talking about enough in the audio space is the fact that like we all talk about how the budgets aren't like what they used to be, like kind of getting the old man on the lawn cursing at the clouds because people don't have $400,000 album budgets anymore. But I think realistically, whenever we get through a point in the economy, whether it's regional to your country or something that's more global, a lot of the work gets harder to find. That's kind of like the reality of it. And and we all, I mean, a lot of people saw this in 2020 when COVID hit, right? People are not making as much money, or like that the artists, are not making as much money, or they're unsure about, what's going to be happening. So one of the first things that I think a lot of people do, especially, artists, one of the first things they're going to do is they're going to try to save money. Hiring a mixing engineer is probably going to be one of the first things that they do to cut some corners. And I think we could talk about this in the way that is like grumbly and cranky, or we could talk about it in a way that is proactive and adapting. And I want to take it that way. I'm not
Mm.
generally somebody that's gonna say, ah, well, the situation sucks, and then like that's the end of it. Like I
Yeah,
want to.
I mean that's what I say, Carl. So
That's why
that's
we
why I needed to team up with you for this podcast, because
yes.
otherwise I was dead in the water.
Yeah, well, that's why we worked so well together, Ben.
Yeah.
But I think this is, I think the state of being a mixing engineer in 2025. I think the writing's been in the wall. The writing's been on the wall for a while that going remote is the future of our industry, and I've believed that for a long time. And then when COVID hit, obviously that shifted a lot of things and pushed a lot of people in that direction. I knew it was always going to be an inevitability. I just didn't know how abruptly and how universally, that was going to be affecting us when COVID hit. So I think that there are going to be some exceptions to anything that I say. I think that's a fair overall disclaimer, is that there's always going to be an exception, right? But I think generally speaking, if you want to be a mixing engineer in 2025, I think not only do you need to really try to go go remote, or at least find and create a pipeline of clients that are remote, but also that those remote clients need to be from a lot of different parts of the world. And I think if we look at it just purely from a financial standpoint, like from a like economics standpoint,
Mm.
especially if you if you live in an area that maybe doesn't have as high of a cost of living, but you can find artists that do live in an area that has a higher cost of living, you can be, relative to what they're used to, you could be a, more cost effective option, but still be making really good money based on, compared to your expenses. So like this is something that I thought was really interesting, and don't quote me on the specific numbers here, but I recently hired a virtual assistant from on Fiverr to just do some like data searching for me. It was literally something where I was like hiring them to spend an hour to like make a spreadsheet for me. And when I was looking through, and I'm like, how can I pay somebody $5 an hour to do this thing? Like I felt genuinely guilty about it. And then like when you go to the different like Fiverr profiles, it shows you like what country they're in. And then I was doing the math, and I was looking up the cost of living for these different situations. And I realized that the person I had hired, like $5 an hour where they live is like the same, it's like an equivalent buying power to like 50 something an hour here. Because like the cost of living was so much less. Like the cost of average rent was like 93% lower than the
I'm
average
sure.
cost of living like here. So
Yeah.
like, and I was like, oh, like the same thoughts that I have when I'm working with artists in LA and Nashville and New York and London, even though I'm in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Like that's why there are so many people in, places like I don't know, like the Philippines and like all these other countries that
Yeah.
can do stuff for prices that seem crazy low to us, but because of the buying power difference, like it can be very lucrative for them.
Yeah.
And I think we as mixing engineers need to kind of like think of ourselves in that same way. Now, I'm not saying go on Fiverr. That's not the point. Not at all the point, right? Because then you're competing against somebody that, you know, can do a mix for $20 and it's, buying their groceries for 3 months, right? It's just like a different playing field. But what I am saying is that because of myself, like I think I'd say like most of my clients I think are international. So
Really?
and this is between, like mixing and like the education stuff that I do as well. Like I very intentionally try to spread out where my clients are from so that if something happens economically, I'm not at the mercy of the US dollar, or I'm not at the mercy of the pound or the euro,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes it works to my advantage, sometimes it works against me, kind of just depending on situation in those different countries, but it seems to have more or less kind of averages out a bit more, and it uh makes it feel less volatile. Even
Mm.
though like on paper, like there is more variation because there's more moving parts because there's 30 like artists in like 30 some different countries that I've worked with. So like yeah, there's a bunch of different variables, but overall it seems to be a little bit more steady because I'm not just relying on, well, what's the current value of the dollar?
Yeah.
What's inflation like here in the States
Wow.
versus
This is
everywhere else?
so
Yeah.
nerdy, but I totally resonate with that. And like, yeah, it is crazy. Like we're also living in a time of like political upheaval where anything could happen in any country basically at this point, and like anything could tank. And like,
Yeah.
somebody whose most of his business was local, like my music business tanked in 2023 for very obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And not and it hasn't recovered. And that's because like of
Yeah.
what's been happening over here,
Yeah.
and the fact that I haven't diversified internationally. Um, but it could happen anywhere. And like, times have shown us, and like, I don't want to be dark, but times have shown us that like things could happen anywhere at any time. And we have to be, and diversifying is a good way to have a cushion, right? So if like,
Yeah.
yeah, like people are like buying gold now. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. It's like if you're at the mercy of your, I don't want to say local economy, I guess like local relative to like the rest of the world. Yeah, but like if you're stuck with that, like yes, if it's going to get harder for you, it's going to get harder for your clients. If it gets easier for you, or if it's easier for your clients, it's easier for you. If it's harder for your clients, it's harder for you. But I feel like that the approach of trying to diversify where your clients come from can really be that that balancing factor. And I think this is especially true for somebody like myself and for people that maybe live in much smaller markets. Like if I have a couple students of mine that live in Brazil, and like again, like the buying power of, you know, $100 is like crazy compared to what a lot of the like other local Brazilian artists can pay for. And also because of the fact that I don't want to like get into a conversation about, the Americanization of like the business world and how uh like so many countries speak English. But the thing too is that a lot of these artists that I work with, a lot of the producers and engineers that I work with, like they speak English as a second language way better than I speak English as a first language a lot of times, you
Yeah,
know?
especially
So
if they're from Northern Europe. Yeah.
yeah, so like if you live in a country like Brazil or Argentina or I would even say maybe like uh like Italy or Germany, like you can get clients from other countries, other big cities, and it actually really works, really works to your advantage. And if you're used to living in a country that doesn't have the same buying power as like the US. If you live in a country that doesn't have a ton of buying power, but you can express yourself and communicate with and like attract people that live in a higher cost of living area, then I don't want to say you don't have to work as hard, but like you don't need to do as many projects to you know crush it and, really have a sustainable career. So yeah, I don't know. I could rant about this all day, but I just think it's very global economics plays a much bigger role in my life as a mixing engineer than I ever would have imagined, you know,
Yeah.
not even like 5 years ago.
Yeah, I think before COVID, these things didn't really feel like a thing,
Yeah.
just like it was business as usual forever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
But it's just been like the post World War II economy that we were used to until around then.
Yeah.
So, but now we're in a different time, so we have to be more adaptable and definitely diversifying where you get artists to work with from is definitely one way to do that. So
Yeah.
that's really interesting.
And it enables people that live in a higher cost of living area to move outside of the city if they want to. Like I talk to a lot of people in the industry that have been in LA for 20 or
Yeah.
30 years and they've been thinking about moving away for a while, and it's like it's you can now. Like it's a big mental shift to to take that leap of, okay, I'm going to stop relying on word of mouth. I'm going to stop relying on my local network here that I've spent 30 years building, which is a stressful thing to do, to like to stop relying on the thing that you've been relying on for 20 or 30 years, right? Like it's a big life change,
Yeah.
and I want to make sure that, that if you've been thinking about this and you've been like stressed about making that big life change, like I want to make sure that you feel like understood right now, because like it's a big fucking deal. And it's hard to do, but for somebody that, if you're paying crazy rent, not just for your place, but also for like a separate studio, and like the rent is ridiculous, and like this general cost of living is ridiculous, and it's only getting worse. But then you're realizing that there's, you moved there because that's where all the work was, and now, the work is, I don't want to say like literally anywhere, but there's work and there's lots and lots and lots of work outside of those major music cities. And especially if you have a a service and like an approach to what you do, that you can do things remotely, then yeah, as long as you have Wi-Fi, what I mean, as long as you have internet and phone service, like go live in the mountains, go live on
Right.
a farm.
But I do want to like push back a little bit because like I do think that making that shift, although it does sound attractive the way you're pitching it now, there's a lot of other things that have to get done, and you have to change your mindset of how you're doing business, and you have to start doing outreach in a different way,
Yeah, oh,
and you
yeah.
have to start connecting with people online and not just in person. And I think we're also in an era where people are starting to get burnt out with like social media and like there I think we're past the peak of people enjoying using social media to connect with other people, and so there's like a lot of uh, I'm just saying it's not necessarily smooth sailing. There's
Oh
going to be
yeah.
a lot of work that you're going to have to put in if you want to take that kind of approach. That's not what you've been used to doing if you've been living in like a New York or an LA or a Nashville or whatever, London. uh yeah,
Yeah.
it's just a totally different. I mean, I've never
Yeah.
done that. I've always been a sort of an out, like, I mean, I'm from New York, but since I've been living in Jerusalem, I've always been like, I've been a business owner out of town, so to speak,
Hmm. Yeah.
this whole time. So if I don't have experience with that, and I think also, yeah, like, there, I think people that move to places like LA, they go there for the community and they make those connections in real life, and that definitely jumpstarts a career. And the question is, how do you shift that? And I think
Yeah.
it's doable, but it's not necessarily easy.
Oh, that, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I guess, but I want to, kind of clarify. It's like I'm not saying it's easy to do this. I'm just saying a couple years ago, as recently as a couple years ago, it wasn't possible.
Yeah.
You had like a very, very, very small handful of exceptions. Like I think like Servin lives in like Virginia Beach or somewhere. You know what I mean? But like, like there's like a small handful of people that can live outside of a major city. But then you have to be like you're a destination, and you have to already have a ridiculous career and network already built up, right?
Yeah.
And I guess what I'm saying is that it's more attainable than it was even just a couple years ago.
Yeah.
It's
But you have to
not,
be really intentional about
you have to
how
be
you,
intentional. Yeah, it's not going to just be like, okay, boop, I'm going to go remote, you know. But
yeah.
at the same time though, if you know, if you've been doing it for a long time in a big city, like if you just do the math and look at like what your monthly expenses would be if you did move, you know, somewhere that you're going to be a little bit happier, like you don't need as many clients, you don't need as big of a budget of projects because your expenses are going to be so much lower.
Right.
So it's not it would be, that's the thing I want to, you have to like take into consideration like when you're doing the math about it, because like if you, I'm just pulling a number out of my butt, but let's say you need like bare minimum, you need to make, you know, $6,000 a year, or sorry, so like a year, a month.
Yeah.
It's needed like $6,000 a month to like pay for everything just to like get by in a big city. But then you do the math and you realize, oh, to have like the same kind of like quality of life and the same things, but like living in you know, living even like a little bit outside of the city, and it's like, oh, I only need like 4,500, you know, per month to like get by or whatever this are. I'm obviously these are just like example numbers I'm just pulling out, but it's like, yeah, like if you don't, the whole point is lowering the bare minimum you need to survive so that you, when you do make that move, like you don't need as many clients to be able to like get by. And then obviously the goal is to then keep on getting more and more, but it allows you to be a little bit pickier. It allows you to be, to have that like breathing room to be intentional. You know, that's, I think that's the benefit of it. It's a lot of fucking hard work, but I believe it is worth the hard work if that is what you want. If, I'm not saying you should move out of a big city. I'm not like, if you're there and you're doing
Yeah.
stuff in person and like you're like a tracking engineer and you love working with artists, that is like that is the hub still. Yeah, then don't go remote. Like I'm not saying you,
I think it's all hard work. It's just a matter of choosing which hard work you're going to do and how you and be smart and being smart about how you strategize doing that hard work, you
yeah,
know?
because you can spend that time thinking about how you can, you're thinking about ways of how to change your approach, or you can spend that time thinking about where the next gig's coming from.
Yeah.
The only difference is one's proactive and one's, you know, you're at the mercy of word of mouth. So not advocate, again, not advocating that everybody, you know, uh, leaves, you know, big cities if you live there, if you love it there. I'm just saying, like, for those of you that do live in a big city and you're thinking about, you know, if you've been thinking about wanting to get out, it's possible. It's not easy, but it's way more possible than it ever was before. And if you do live in like a smaller city, you don't need to move to a big city to really build something great. You know, I never lived in a major music city. The closest was Philly, which is not a major music city, and I only actually
It
lived
was in the 70s, by the way,
in
but
this,
but
well,
that's
and
okay.
not in my, in my time. I'm not that old, Ben. Um,
Just bring it
yeah,
full circle here, you know?
yeah. Yeah, I say I look great for a 75-year-old man. Um, but no, but realistically, like the closest to like a music city I ever lived in was in Philly, and even then, I, except for like 6 months right out of college, I always lived out in the suburbs anyway. Like I lived in like West Philly for like 6 months or something, and that was it. Otherwise, I was like half hour out. So I was like in the suburbs of a non-music city, and you know, and getting started during a recession. It is like really when I started
Yeah,
going full time.
us
So like,
millennials. Yeah.
yeah, so like I, it's not easy, but it's doable, and there are more people doing it than you realize.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I want to, but besides from like location and diversification, what else could we talk about in terms of like being a business owner that is a mixing engineer in 2025? Like are we billing per song or are we billing per hour? Obviously not.
Oh yeah,
But like what's included? How do you pitch it? That's something that I wanted to ask you about.
yeah. I mean, I think like the only thing that I've seen that really has changed over the past couple years is just if anything, just the ease of delivering things. Printing mix stems is easier, doing alternate versions is easier. Computers are getting faster, so they're doing stuff faster. Like storage space is getting cheaper, internet's getting faster. So like those things are getting better, but like, the actual process, I really feel like it hasn't really changed much for me. Billing wise, I you can have different ways of doing it. For me, it's always per song or per project. It's always going to be that because I tend to take the approach of if it's something that the artist is in control of how long it takes, like tracking or even I'd say like vocal editing, because it could be one layer, it could be 45 layers. It could just need like
It
three
could be
notes fixed.
totally well
Yeah.
sung, or it could be a piece of a shit sandwich that needs special love. Yeah.
I was looking for euphemisms and I couldn't find it, and you took that moment to just say a shit sandwich, so I appreciate that.
Well, have you seen? I've probably asked you this. Have you seen Spinal Tap?
So yes, but probably not since high school.
But yeah, there's like one of their records is called Shark Sandwich, and the review is a shit sandwich. I
So
think it's the very beginning of the movie. Yeah,
I need to watch that again. It's been way too
same.
long. Um,
But yeah,
yeah,
but
but
yeah. So we're at the mercy of the artist in such
at the mercy of the
situations.
So when it's the
Yeah.
mercy of the artist, then it's hourly, which also
Yes.
kind of incentivizes them to make decisions. But when
Yes.
it's something that I'm, more or less in charge of how long it takes, like mixing or mastering or like some like drum production or something, like I just do a flat rate because I know how long I'm going to take on things. And then that way, if I choose to go down rabbit holes, I'm not charging the artist for me to be chasing after something. But also then I'm not doing work for free when the artist is the one going down rabbit holes.
Yeah, exactly. I have a very similar philosophy, and I have maybe I frame it a little bit differently, but it's sort of like if I'm going for my best work, my 100%, I'm going to charge you my full rate, and it's going to be just a flat fee for the song, right? So whether it's a production or a mix, uh, and I'm going to just do the best I can, and it's probably going to be my usual thing, and then you're going to love it, or maybe you need some revisions, and that's okay. Now, if it's something that it's not that, and I just don't know what the scope is, if the scope is not my best thing, it's going to be an hourly rate, because otherwise, that there's no other way to cut corners, and there's no other way to, uh, you know, like I can't give you a demo rate because I'm always going to want to make it better, and you're always going to want it to be better for whatever rate. So like this is stupid. It's just going to bill hourly, and the time is going to dictate how edges maybe get cut, corners get cut. So yeah, that's sort of my thought process.
So I'm just so I can make sure I'm really following. Like, what is the threshold that makes you decide what between
Yeah.
those two?
Basically what the artist is looking to accomplish. Are they looking to just make a stellar production or a stellar mix, or if they're trying to do something that's like, on a budget and I need to get something out, and I don't necessarily need this to be like the greatest thing of all time, but I do want to express myself somehow. So it's like, okay, this is
Okay.
going to be an hourly thing. Like we're gonna put whatever hours. You could probably fight me on this, but it's well,
No.
I can't I could quote maybe a mix rate and then like an hourly recording rate potentially, but it's not going to be, yeah. Unless if we're going all the way, then we're going all the way, and I'm charging you my rate, and we're gonna just work really hard, and it's probably going to be easy. And if it's if it's not that, then
Yeah.
hourly rate it is.
I don't think I'm gonna fight you on that. I'm like thinking about it now because I never really thought about it that way, where it's something that, if you have the total like buy-in, everybody's in it together, we're just gonna like make this as great as we can, and you do it as a flat rate, awesome. And then it's like if like the budget's smaller, or like it seems like they're the quality of their when I say the quality of their vision, I don't mean like whether you like it or not. I mean more like how the clarity of their vision, I guess, the quality of the clarity of the vision. If it seems like they don't really even know what they want and you're going to have to do some exploration, then yeah, doing it hourly makes sense. And I guess like when you're saying about it being something where they don't necessarily want it to be the best, I guess like what's that conversation like? I'm kind of curious.
I don't know. I'll give you like an example. It's just like a longtime artist client that I've worked with um, says, I have this song that I made with a friend, and they made it on GarageBand, and they want to come over and mix it, but they're not going to they don't have budget for a full mix. So can we just do 2 hours in the studio and you'll do the best you can with it? You know, that would be like an obvious hourly rate thing, I mean, they're asking for
Yeah.
hourly time, but they're saying like, we don't have a lot of budget, but we know what you take, and about 2 hours is what we're willing to do.
Yeah. So
But
it's just
we
like,
trust you, so let's
yeah.
just do the best we can with that.
Yeah.
And
So
then
it's just
the
like doing the
hours,
most.
yeah,
Yeah.
doing the most we can with the time and the budget they have. And I probably wouldn't take a project like that on with a new client, but I will with an old client who we have a relationship with.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah. And I think that's also something where, for me, like, uh, I would still think of it for myself doing it as hourly because it's something where they're in charge of how long something's going to take. And in that case, they're like, oh no, I want to do 2 hours. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Let's just
right,
do,
exactly.
yeah. It's like, yeah,
They told me it's 2 hours.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's more examples where it's like less obvious how many hours it's going to take, but it's like I don't really know what you're trying to do exactly, but we're going to just bill hourly and see what comes out of this.
So yeah, so I guess like to kind of circle back to the what's changing for mix engineers. I feel like in that sense, like for the stuff that you're talking about now, that's kind of like when mixing is in a way like kind of lumped into the same scope as something else, and it's
Yeah, and that does happen.
Yeah, I feel like
even if ideally it doesn't.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I have done the hybrid where it's like, I don't know what we're doing and I'm going to bill you hourly, and then like, okay, I'm going to give you like a mixing rate to actually mix this and make it sound as good as possible.
Yeah.
Or like my mixing rate will maybe include some hours of recording, but not all necessarily the hours. Like I've done that too, of like, hey, like I don't know where this is going or what quality you want, but I need to charge you for my mixing rate. And I'm going to lump in a few hours of recording, and then any more than that, we'll just do hourly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's sort of like a hybrid.
Yeah. As long as it's clear what it does and doesn't include, then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, the other thing that I wanted to say personally about like what I'm including in my mix right now, which I didn't always do, is the mastering. And that includes like if I'm doing like the full on master. So if I quote somebody my full rate for a mix, it'll include a master with a mastering engineer. And that's just like included. And if they have their own mastering engineer, then we'll talk about reducing the fee maybe, because I'm most comfortable working with my mastering engineer, and I'm most comfortable having a real master and not faux mastering it myself. And I found that that's just like the best way to get the best quality and to just include it. And then they know what they're paying for, and they know they don't have to also pay for mastering. And it's just kind of lumped in there, That was like another thing that I just wanted to.
No, yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I don't know if you do that.
Yeah, usually I do. Like, well, for me, it's it depends on the song and the artist, and if it's something that I feel like me doing the mastering is going to be an integral part of the overall sound, then I'm going to do it. And I feel very confident doing it, and I really enjoy doing it. When it's a song that is, I don't want to say like out of my wheelhouse, mastering wise, but like, or something where the master. If the master, here's a better way of saying it. If the master is a part of the production, and I think some styles of music, the master is part of the production, like a lot of electronic music, like that, the thickness of it and the intensity of that's just like a part of the sound. In that case, like I'm doing it because that's all one big part. Other styles of music, the mastering is meant to like be a transparent quality control, like fixing any little things that may have like snuck through and just polishing it. I think that's when I will get somebody else to do it. Like, cause I'm not good at like the polishing I'm not good at polishing my own mixes, but
Right.
when it's something
They're
where,
already polished, bro.
oh shucks, no, but in seriously, like if it's a song that needs that, I go to somebody else. If it's a song where the line between production, mixing, and mastering is so blurry that it's just kind of like one big like blob. I don't know. I don't know why lines would evolve from a straight line into a blurry line into a blob, but whatever. I don't.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not. I'm not. I'm not
Confetti.
Charles. I'm not Charles Darwin. Don't at me, bro. Um, but no, like that's really what makes the choice for me. And I'll usually still include the price when I give them the quote either way. And sometimes with the artist, I'll tell them that either I'll do the mastering or I'll have so and so do the mastering. The price will be the same for you. You're still going to pay me anyway, and I'll pay them out of the budget. I'll handle all of that stuff. It's just a question of when we get to the end stage. It's like if I feel like I'm going to be the best fit for this particular song, I'm going to do it. And if I
Yeah, and
think
then
that
you're paying yourself as the mastering
yeah,
engineer.
and then if I think that they're going to be the best fit for it, I'm going to have them do it. Like the rate's the same regardless. So
Yeah.
it's not a skill thing. It's not a quality thing. It's a taste thing and a who's a better fit for this particular
I think
problem.
this is an important point, kind of. Like I like knowing how and when to delegate the tasks that you've been allocated budget for is a very big picture part of like the mixing business. And saying
Yeah.
like, okay, I can tune this vocal, but I could also pay someone else and like save myself 2 hours to start another mix and and get that off my plate and also employ somebody else, and kind of thinking big picture about that kind of stuff is been a game changer for me, and I know it's been a game changer for you.
Yeah.
And also in like my other business of podcast work, just delegating leads me to be able to expand my team
Yeah.
and increase revenue. So
Yeah.
like just thinking with that big picture mind is huge. And like and sometimes you got to do it yourself and it makes the most sense, and
Yeah.
like it sounds to me like maybe even like projects are sort of maybe trending in that direction for you, of like you used to delegate more mastering and now you're taking more of it on yourself than you used to. But like that's still a big picture decision, and
Yeah.
you're not and you're very comfortable. I know you are Carl specifically are very comfortable delegating that stuff when it's appropriate and you need and makes sense. And that's like a
Yeah.
very I think that's like a really important thing to think about as you run your business as a mixing engineer.
Yeah. And I think, that brings up this idea for me too, that a lot of times now mixing engineers have to take on the responsibilities that would have traditionally been the producer's responsibilities. Especially for somebody like myself that works with a lot of like left of center pop adjacent styles, where a lot of my artist clients are self-produced. So I am, like typically if there was a producer on the project, the producer would be the one kind of like managing it all and finding the right people and deciding who's going to be, or at least recommending who's going to do the mix and, recommending who's going to do the master, or like they're the ones asking the mixing engineer who should do the mastering. Like, they're the ones kind of making those decisions, or at least like getting insight to be able to make those decisions for the artist. And I think now for myself, when I'm working with a lot of self-produced artists, I as a mixing engineer, I'm kind of taking on some of those aspects that are traditionally, kind of like traditionally what a producer, like an old school producer would have done, where it's like you're the big picture, like, dot connector of people and kind of making those decisions.
Yes.
So it's not like a paid service. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of like the weird, like go into like the whole like well Rick Rubin doesn't produce, but he does produce, and like it's that whole argument of like people thinking, well, that's not production if he's not setting up microphones, but like he's making way better music than you are. Not you, Ben. I mean like the
Oh
the
yeah,
crank the cranky people talking about that. Um,
for sure.
and it's like that's that element of trying to be the musical matchmaker. It's like that's part of being a mixing engineer for me at least, and I think for a lot of other people too.
Yeah, I mean, this happens more when I'm technically the producer than when I'm the mixer, but also when I'm the mixer, I'll be like, oh yeah, there's an album I'm thinking about where it was like, oh, you need a vocal editor. Let me send you someone's, Lucas's number,
Yeah.
and like
Friend of the show,
friend
Lucas
of the
Guido.
yeah. So like, and then the artist I was working with was super happy with his work, and it made my job as a mixing engineer way easier. So
Yeah.
that was great, and
And it builds the artist's trust in you because
yes, because
you knocked it. Is it
exactly,
you don't have to be
exactly.
the one to like your mouse clicks don't have to be the one that saves the day, but like the fact that you brought in the person, like you were the
Yeah,
one who like knew you knew a guy that came in
right.
and like knocked it out of the park,
Yeah,
like that makes you look like a hero.
yeah. So like Lucas did the editing and he was super happy with that. And Connor did the mastering and he was super happy with that. And I made both of those matchmaking moments happen. And it
Yep.
was it was great, and
Yeah.
that's what it's about. And I,
And
and I
yeah.
love that. I actually love doing that. I love being a connector. And my wife and I have never set anybody up romantically, but we make a lot of friend setups. And it seems to be one of our special powers. So
Yeah.
I like to do that also in the music industry. So
Yeah, which
it's fun.
which which makes sense. And it
Yeah.
makes sense why you're really bad at or not bad at, but like why you don't do like
Well, we're
romantic
no, we're
matchmaking
bad at we're
because
bad at romantic matchmaking.
yeah.
We're good at
But yeah.
friendship matchmaking.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's because that's what you've been doing your whole career as like that's what we do
Yeah.
as audio people,
Yeah.
like whether we're
Yeah.
doing it in an official capacity or not, like we're if nothing else, we're always thinking about it. We're always thinking about, oh, like, oh, this person's awesome. Like, you guys should work together. Like, you should meet. Like, well, you artists, you need to meet this other artist that's in your city because they're really cool. Or like, oh,
Yeah.
have you played a show with them yet? Because it'd be such a fun night. Like
Yeah.
we're always doing that.
Yeah.
So I don't think that even though this is a new, I don't want to say like a new responsibility for a lot of mixing engineers now, it's not a new skill set, at least. It's just, mixing engineers 20 years ago usually weren't the ones recommending vocal editors, but
Right. Exactly.
now we get asked. But the good thing is we know some, like we know who we
Yeah.
like, or at least like we know somebody who would know somebody. And that's and also knowing that that vocal editor can be remote. They don't have to
Yes.
be in your city either. Like it's,
Totally. No.
the,
So like I forget if Lucas is also in Lancaster or somewhere nearby, but like the artist is in New Jersey,
yeah,
the vocal editor is in Pennsylvania. I'm in Jerusalem, and
yeah.
the mastering engineer is in Toronto, and
Oh yeah.
there you go.
I mean, that was like the thing,
And that's
before.
like becoming so typical, right?
Yeah. Well, like that's why to me, like it's working remotely with artists from all over the world has been completely like I've become numb to it because there was a time I remember like this is maybe 2018 or 2019 where I was doing projects where it was like the artist was from Spain, the producer was in the UK, uh I was in the US, my assistant was in Canada, and mastering engineer was in Australia. And like that was just like a typical Tuesday, you
Yeah,
know? So like it, it, it's weird how unweird it becomes too,
yeah,
and then like I think it's a very similar, it's a different mental shift of deciding to go more remote and to start like approaching your business as a remote business. It's a different type of like mental shift than going from full stack uh top to bottom production into like delegating out mastering or delegating out mixing or editing or whatever. It's a different mental shift, but it's if you've done one, then it's like you've been through that tough shift before. You've been through a big fundamental change in how you run your business, and you've survived, and you've made it to the other side, and you've realized how much more you enjoy not having to do vocal editing, not having to worry about checking the master in 17 different places. Like whatever the part is that you're like the least excited about, you've seen how good it feels to get that off your plate, and like so you've seen that it's worth it to make those changes.
yeah, totally. Well, Carl, I think this is a great place to wrap up, also because it's getting late. But that was a great rant, and this episode really covered a lot of things, and I'm surprised at how deep and wide it went. So
Yeah.
this is good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course, I'm glad. I'm glad we made an episode after spending 40 minutes blabbering and not actually recording anything.
Yeah.
But no, you're awesome.
You too, man.
I hope the wedding goes great tonight.
Which wedding goes great tonight?
The one that you're DJing.
Oh.
Gotcha.
No, dude, it's a bar mitzvah. It's not even a wedding.
Okay.
The stakes are a lot lower.
Here's the thing. It's like you can
and
make
it's
that
way less cool.
but here's the thing. You can make that joke. I can't make that joke.
Okay, fine. Well, anyways, Carl, this has been fun, and I'll see you after the bar mitzvah. We'll touch base.
Mazel tov, Ben.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Carl.